Hopefully that's okay. So just if you're looking for a very focused, concise 35 minutes of future-looking, professional, smooth focus on how technology is going to change in the future, then unfortunately I'm not the right guy for you. If you're looking for a slightly more relaxed ramble through some of the thoughts and findings I've uncovered over the last, which I realised this week was 28 years in digital, then hopefully the next 35-40 minutes or so will be of a level of interest. The kind of idea behind Fire Smoke and the passion for the kind of opportunities that I think I've seen we've missed as an industry, particularly over the last 28 years, kind of came to mind with a quote I heard from a UK diplomat about Yasser Arafat in the 80s. He was the chairman of the PLO, and he said about Yasser Arafat, he's never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And that kind of triggered something in me. It made me think, well, actually, as an industry, we're missing lots of opportunities to really make a difference to people's lives on the whole. So as all good talk should really include, I'm going to play you a video. It's about 3 minutes long. This video was created by the very same people that created the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma, if any of you saw this. This is about 3 or 4 years old, and this is from them. Yeah, about 2016. I'll just play. It's about 3 minutes long. I'll play it. Hopefully it will come through okay. I'm sure Pete will let me know if it doesn't. But I'll just play it.
Architects of our digital world, stop. Be better, because we can be. And we can see that these systems have been designed with intricacy so that companies can keep our attention indefinitely. I don't want to keep crushing these freaking candies. I don't want these alerts to completely command me. I don't care if that panda bear is dancing. Well, maybe. With a hula hoop. Okay, this is fantastic. I have to share this with my 10 friends and 10,000 strangers. Caption, who wants to throw a panda rager? Great, let me go back about my life. For God's sakes, I'm trying to right swipe my wife. Huh. 30 seconds and just 2 Facebook likes. Or is that just 2 for which I've been notified? Let me go back and check inside and see whose likes it tried to hide. They don't show them all. I wonder why. This panda's dancing. And another video plays after automatically. This one of a gopher that stage turns dramatically. It's like my attention is kept systematically raptured by algorithms that know exactly what I want. Or not what I want, just what I'll watch. And the people behind this intelligent design genuinely want to better our lives. But their bonuses just so happen to be tied to keeping time on site exceptionally high. And now even my news apps have been gamified, and what am I, not gonna click that one simple sex tip guaranteed to blow her mind? Wait, where was I, and why have I forgotten to look for that thing I'm supposed to find? And my God, look at the time. It is shocking. But somehow, yes, Netflix, I am still watching. And I know. I should have more self-control. But just to be clear, you just spent $1 million telling me this story designed to cut off at the end, leaving me wanting more. See, of course I want to see what you have in store. See my cursor already waiting there on the screen floor as you tease the next hour in all of its glory. And you'll give it to me, unless I actively abort. See, it seems the decision's already made for me. The countdown clock's moving. There it goes. 5, 4, 3. I need to sleep. But you made me want this more. This is not what I consciously signed up for when I hit play on one episode 6 hours ago. Architects of our digital world. You have more data, information, and control over our attention, the tools to tweak our emotions so we'll return to your experience. But is that what you should do? Or should you? build digital tools so advanced they can actually enhance the world outside the device in our hands? Can you add so much value that it lets us put our phones back in our pants as fast as we possibly can? Not time-sucking, time-giving innovation. That's what it means to be truly technologically advanced. The future is not all screens. It's humanity enhanced.
You're on mute again, Dave.
Okay, is that better now, Pete? Sorry, it keeps jumping out. Teams keeps jumping out. Is that okay?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, super. Hopefully the screen settled down a little bit there as well. But hopefully that video, rather clumsily played, outlined some of the spirit of what I'm trying to talk about today and where I'm looking to come from. This is not a talk or 30 minutes pointing the finger at big tech exclusively, although of course they have some responsibility for where we find ourselves. It's more, what can we do as digital leaders, as owners of businesses, as members of an ever-changing digital and human community that puts us a little bit more in control of our use of technology and its impact. I'm going to try and avoid using these 5 phrases over the next few minutes. I can't promise I won't, however. I'm sure you've heard lots of these. You've had lots of talks with these phrases included. So let's just start off by looking at what humane actually is defined by, and it's characterised by compassion and harmony of agreement in feeling. And I think that's really important. That humane means a compassionate approach to each other and our lives. And technology, again, a kind of overview of what that actually is defined as in the dictionary is the application of knowledge to enhance the practical aims of human life, the change and manipulation of the human environment. And I think what we've seen the change and manipulation of the human. We've moved from technology being in place to enhance our environment to technology being in place to manipulate us as individuals. And I think that's a very fine line, and one I think as an industry we might have crossed and rather unknowingly crossed as well. So my first kind of ponderment was that we've designed for human manipulation. And I'll give you some examples of that just now. So let's look at this. Hopefully this diagram comes out reasonably. Well, we're very complicated people, and our relationship with technology is very complicated indeed. I had an example of that this week where my daughter is soon to have her first driving lesson on Friday, and she has managed to negotiate with myself and her mother us paying for the lessons, and I said, okay, great, can you email me please the details of the instructor so I can pay them? And the word email said to her, she was like, why would I email them to you? Surely I can send them through social media or through messaging or through whatever. So yet again I disappointed my daughter in an alarming way. But that just for me kind of highlighted the fact that we are all within our own, and again, this is an oft used word, but we're all in our own ecosystems really, and we all are different people at different times in our relationship with technology. The diagram here we've got in the purple, sometimes I'm a consumer, sometimes I'm me with my own responsibilities and my own friendships and networks. Others I'm driven by societal drivers, my political beliefs where I live, certainly never more so than with COVID at the moment, and with my own moral kind of compass. And in the green, the bright green circles there, we have different types of technology. And I want to focus just purely on this particular Venn diagram amongst many other Venn diagrams for the purposes of kind of looking at humane tech. And just to drill in on that, there's three particular influences, I think, on addictive technology. And we're going to look at one of the outputs, which is attention-driven design today. But also there's two much more human influences and willful blindness and unintended consequences. And the best way I can show this is with the example of Facebook. There is no doubt that Zuckerberg and his board, when Facebook was first started to get some traction, they never intended for people to put things such as the Christchurch shootings last year on their platform. However, when they were developing their platform or when they were looking at things like use cases and technology and reach and responsibility, I find it incredibly hard to believe that at no stage did anyone say, what if someone does something bad on our platform? That was ignored. Or whether it's for financial, for growth reasons or whatever, that was ignored. People became willfully blind to that potential. Therefore, the unintended consequences of this happening in the future is actually not that unintended. It was recognised, but nothing was done about it. And that's how we end up with this attention-driven design focus. Facebook lost something between identifying there could be issues being present on their platform, and the focus of that was because they had to get people's attention on their product to enable them to increase their revenue. So I'm quickly going to go through some examples of attention which leads to addiction, which leads to a large part of our relationship with technology at the moment. And we'll look at what's going on today, and we'll look at some potential solutions moving forward, both for us as individuals and us as business leaders. So let's try and understand the desire quickly. Many of you will know this phrase, whether it was said by Mark Zuckerberg, it's always up for some conjecture. But move fast and break things was in the late 90s, early 2000s, the driver, and in many ways it still is, it's the driver for innovation in the tech space. New products, new platforms, new services. That led to, in the mid-2000s to 2010 onwards, the ability for some of these companies that adopted that framework to break into markets. So we can talk about Amazon and Facebook and Google. More relevant examples could be Airbnb, Uber, Booking.com, who really disrupted the markets of travel, transport, and hotels. Then that led to us, in a positive sense, when I really think social media was at its peak and at its zenith, where that approach to moving fast and breaking things enabled social media platforms to break barriers. We can think of the Arab Spring, we can think of gay marriage in Ireland, and more recently we can look at what's happened with Black Lives Matter. There are still snippets and jewels of great hope in the use of technology. And then what happened, I believe, is around about 2014 to 2016, let's say more nefarious uses of social media in particular were identified. And we've just got to look at people like Trump. Trump, for his very, very many faults, identified the use of social media as a way of breaking down historical trust relationships between, in his case, society and government. And he exploited that. And he used social media. And I think we'd all agree, whatever we think of the laughable statements he comes out with now on social media, he succeeded in breaking down trust. And we can look at Brexit. Whatever way we voted in that particular referendum, Dominic Cummings and Vote Leave used social media to break down trust between historical relationships between society. And in both cases, they're the state. But the same thing works for brands and the companies and businesses and councils and organisations. So what did that do? That has an impact on society, whether we like it or not. We can pull that thread all the way back. The approach of moving fast and breaking things and being agile and failing fast, in my opinion, has led to technology being used to break trust and potentially break society. And again, Black Lives Matter and the rise of the far right, they are given to increase their reach through the use of technology. All unintended consequences, and I'm afraid as a result, a lot of us are willfully blind to what's going on. And of course, we see the impact of the use of technology and this entire thread that I've just outlined there. Sorry, my dog's just yawning on the floor next to me. This entire thread with the sheer volume and pressures of technology on our mental health. The news we read, the way we absorb it, the way we share it, where we get our information from, the pressures on us as individuals is probably more intense than it has been for certainly since the Second World War, and obviously COVID's only added to that. Don Norman, many of you might know Don Norman. He was one of the first employees of Apple, and he was really responsible for their user experience and their user interfaces. His core principle is tech moves quickly, people move slowly, and the responsibility of people in the digital space is to understand that relationship and close that gap. Now, what we've done is we've closed the gap in terms of trying to make people move faster. We sometimes need to understand that technology might need to be a little bit slower, but we've hacked this core behavioural principle. And that's my second ponder from what I've observed over the last few years. So let's just use a really quick example of three of the biggest companies that have ever existed, really: Google, Facebook and Amazon. And they've all got one thing in common. They started off as one thing and they ended up being something else. That is a pivot, to tick off that word from my unsaid items earlier. Google started as a search engine, pure search engine. Facebook was a pure social connector. Amazon purely was focused on connecting seller to buyer, with them being the seller and us being the buyer. They uncovered jointly, and in many ways, a slight aside here is that the people who identified this thing called data exhaust, which is our browsing history, where we go to, when we go to it, what we click on, what we like, the very same people that found that principle at Google then went to work for Facebook and are now working at Amazon. Each of those companies started off as fundamental businesses there on the left. They uncovered the principle that our data exhaust, our data waste is another term that Facebook have used very recently, to really start mining us as individuals, identifying our behavior, identifying our likes, our dislikes, our trends, and building these profiles, these user profile information. And of course, they use that user profile information to monetize a large part of their business. Google's price per click times their likelihood to click algorithm based on our user profile information generates 84% of Google's revenue, not Alphabet's revenue, just Google's. Facebook, actually, this was an interesting aside, Facebook actually do not sell our data to advertisers. Facebook sell our data in anonymized form to traders who then sell our data to the highest bidder. So it's a bit like in the old days, a bit like the stock market in the city. So they actually pass it on to someone else. And that's as a result of where the Cambridge Analytica piece came from. And what Amazon do, obviously, and you've seen that very recently with a lot of their announcements in terms of new hardware, they feed our profile information into what they call flywheel process design, which is creating products very, very quickly, very, very aggressively, and launching them into the market. I don't know if some of you have seen recently, they've got a security drone for people's houses. So that's all come about from that. But they started off as one. They identified the strength of the data that we all hold as individuals, and they've reframed their businesses. This phrase I've heard a lot: data is the new oil. And you would think, based on what I've just talked about, that would be absolutely accurate. But I believe attention is the new oil. Because the similarities, to pull that metaphor a little bit longer, is that our attention is running out just as quickly as the oil in the ground is running out, and businesses need to find new ways of developing technology to better reflect that. So this diagram here basically is a never-ending vicious circle. Attention drives data, data drives businesses, business craves attention. And what do we do when we crave something? Well, I think we've all been there. We all act in slightly nefarious or ways that we might not necessarily be proud of ourselves in doing. And I think, again, that's where we find ourselves as an industry, and certainly where big tech find themselves now. Gloria Mark, I reference this a lot of this data on the website, and I'll give you the link at the end of this slide deck, so you can have a look at the research and some of the links. Gloria Mark is one of the best statistical analysts in the world. She completed a piece of research in 2004 identifying people's propensity and ability to concentrate on a particular task without interrupting themselves. So this is not being interrupted by an external source. This is interrupting oneself, being distracted by oneself. 2004, it was 3 minutes. 2016, which is the most recent time that she's done this study to this level of detail, it was 40 seconds. So again, just to remind you, this is us distracting ourselves, not being distracted by technology. So there's something going on in the way that we are now programmed, in inverted commas, that is affecting our ability to concentrate and affecting our attention. So what we're seeing now with a lot of businesses is we are fighting as an industry for less available attention. We've only got 40, this was 4 years ago, we've only got 40 seconds of the ability to concentrate on one thing at a time. So more and more people are fighting for less and less attention to feed that data machine, and to do that, we create attention-focused technology. That doesn't seem a very sustainable model to me. We create attention-focused tech to fight for less available attention to feed the data machine. There has to be an endpoint in that relationship. So ponder number 3, we're mining and designing for a dwindling resource. So what's the impact? This was a headline that really stuck out at me, and this is from the Guardian about 18 months ago. I'm sure many of you listening to this have read or understand or listened to people talk about the way attention-seeking technology uses a lot of the same principles as casino slot machines. This is very clearly a direct link to that. That to me is an absolutely appalling indictment of our industry at the moment. And again, without getting into too deep psychological considerations, there is a well-known through the work I do with the charity I'm a trustee of, in terms of mental health, we support a lot of people of different ages with mental health challenges. We know very clearly that individual vulnerabilities are exploited by people paying individuals attention. That creates addiction, an addiction in a relationship, an addiction to a substance, an addiction to a way of thinking. We've gone down that path with a lot of the way we've designed technology at the moment. This was a key thought to me. There is a lot of fantastic technology out there, from hearing aids to prosthetic legs to some of the great mental health products that I've seen very recently using AI and machine learning, one of which I'm really pleased to be involved with, from smartwatches. So that was our goal, to let's surpass human capability. Let's improve people's lives. Let's improve the ability of them as individuals. But actually what we've ended up doing in many ways is we're creating technology that surpasses human vulnerabilities. We exploit vulnerabilities in terms of their attention, in terms of their likes, their dislikes. We use that as a way of getting people's engagement and attention. So here's just a quick summary of the four considerations. We've designed for human manipulation. We've hacked that core belief of tech moves quick, people less so. We're mining and designing for a dwindling resource, namely attention. And we've created tech surpassing people's vulnerabilities, not their capabilities. So it's not all doom and gloom, I don't think, and hopefully we'll turn the corner into the sunlight in a second. But a question for everyone to have a think about, really, and something I've not really quite grasped myself, is who leads this creation of human tech? Is it people like these four here? My guess would be no. My personal guess would be no. I don't quite know what Zuckerberg's looking at there. He seems very focused, but there was a time I personally where if someone said to me they worked for Facebook and Google in particular, I would be incredibly impressed. Now it's a bit more shameful, I'm afraid, for that. Is it these guys? would you trust these guys to focus on more humane tech? I mean, we could talk for a long time about the NHS track and trace app. And this is not a political statement. We could put Merkel, we could put even Jacinda Ardern of New Zealand in here. It's the principle: do we trust big technology? Do we trust government? We find ourselves in this position through potentially our own willful blindness and through the unintended consequences of our use of technology. Or is it us? And here's some very quick examples of technology that's beginning to come to the market that empowers us to take more control. We all know what VPNs are, I'm sure. Brave is a browser which very much works on putting the individual in control. So the browser acts as a gatekeeper to your data and the way you interact with third-party websites and applications. The top left there is Solid, which is Tim Berners-Lee's new project, which is fundamentally the principle of putting you in control of your data, and apps and products asking you explicitly for access to certain data types and the reasons why they want that. And the bottom left there, Responsible Minerals Initiative, is underpinning the Fairphone project, which some of you might have recently said have seen have just come out with a new series of mobile phone hardwares and operating systems which move away from data gathering to a much more streamlined framework of communication. I hope you get the time to have a look at those, at least 3 of those things there. So here's a principle to consider. So if we look at this diagram again, the unintended consequence, the willful blindness, kind of feeding into attention-driven design, an approach which I believe has some legs and has a little bit of credibility without being too airy-fairy or too theoretical in its approach, is us as individuals, whether we're digital leaders, whether we are developing a product, whether we're designing it, let's be fully aware of what we are doing, of why we are doing it, and the impact on individuals. Then we can understand the consequences better. We can understand what we're doing, and we can build stronger and better connections with individuals. The opposite of addiction in many ways is connection. By connecting to people, again through the work with the charity we work with, once you connect with people, once you have a relationship which is built on trust, which is built on being aware of each other's situation, you can really start to drive some change. So being willfully aware of what's going on in our businesses, the impact on individuals, understanding the consequences of what we're designing and what we're rolling out, gives us a much better opportunity to really connect with people. And as a very, very quick example, I recently worked with a client. We turned off cookies on their website, and rather than a pop-up saying we respect your privacy, tick all these boxes so we can track you, we said we respect your privacy, we have no cookies, browse away. And as a really small example, very small example, it was a very niche shoe shop. Their sales went up 10%. Now it'd be very, very naive of me to directly link that with the fact that we took cookies off their site, but theoretically it made a much more humane and direct connection between customer and business. So another diagram: connect on human terms, deliver on an equitable basis, then you can build trust, and you can build trustworthiness in the use of your product, in the engagement with your website, your app, your business. Fundamentally, the tech genie is out of the bottle. It's going to be incredibly hard for us to roll back a lot of the technology we've got in place, a lot of the tracking, a lot of the cookies that are installed on every website, a lot of the privacy controls that have in many ways become standard for a lot of businesses around the world. So we should use the same technology and the same principles, but mirror them rather than replicate. And I'll just briefly talk to you about this. Is one product I'm involved with now. It's a mental health platform, and do please take a look at it if you get 5 minutes in your own time. And basically what we do is we use a lot of data. We use a lot of data that's provided to us by individuals. But rather than selling that to advertisers, selling that to third parties, we process that data and present it back to an individual in a very black and white way. So a simple example would be, and this is how this platform works, we monitor someone's digital footprint over the course of a day. We gather that data, we process it, and we show it back to the individual at the end of the day to say, look, did you know you did this behavior? Did you know you did this? The last time you missed these meetings, the last time you responded to you responded to that calendar request in that way, you burnt out a week or two later. Just be aware of that. So yes, we're gathering data. Yes, we're processing data. But no, we're not sharing it with anyone else. We're sharing it directly back to the individual. So again, let's use the principles of the technology that's already got us to where we are, but just turn it around and use it in a different way. Here's some practicalities. One thing I'm very keen on is create friction in interaction, slow people down, make them think. We can do that. Amazon are great at creating frictionless transactions, the one buy, click button, etc. We need to start slowing people down and allowing them time to think about what they're doing. And we can do that in terms of, are you sure you want to proceed? Let's just check exactly what you've done so far. So second one, understand the harms of our use and design of technology. And there's some very simple principles here. There are well-defined and well-known impacts of social media and mobile tech in terms of a negative sense. There are also positive ones, but just to focus on the negative ones here, we know through studies in particularly that these effects of social media, the impact they have on individuals. So they do have an impact on, they have an impact on democracy. They have an impact on people's relationships. We know that, we understand that. We need to be aware of that as individuals. When we're saying to people, go to our social media, you can find our information on there. Okay, great, go there, but understand how this overconsumption of this kind of content on that kind of platform can have an impact on people. Moving on from that, there's human sensitivities of our use of technology. And these are much less binary, much more analog. Understand, for example, decision making. How do we align what we do with what we intend to do? And there is a whole lot of study at the moment going into trying to hack into our intentions to predict our actions. But we need to understand as digital leaders and those in the digital market what those sensitivities are and what they could do in terms of impacting on an individual. And of course, you can see the bottom two there, social reasoning and group dynamics. Facebook, Twitter understand those incredibly well. Design with the end in mind. These findings and these thoughts were from an excellent book called Ends by Joe McLeod. I definitely recommend you take a look at that. We've all been in a situation where, do you think we can end a relationship with a business online? No. It's very easy to sign up for a Barclays card. Have you ever tried to close your Barclays card online? No, they won't let you do that. However, it is known, and a lot of businesses I work with now are making it easier for people to be able to end their relationship, end their contract with them as a business. That's really important to do. It's a very humane, human-focused end of a relationship. Just touch on privacy very briefly here. Privacy has been commoditized by big tech in many ways. They've done an excellent job of merging people's privacy with data. And the two things are very, very different. Our privacy is very different to our data. In the grey there are aspects of our privacy that have nothing to do with our data. Secrecy, we all have secrets, our right to be left alone, and our self-identity. They're not data points. They're very human, very core to our very being. But what big tech has done is they have merged all that into data points, i.e., and control over our information, what we can and cannot provide to people to get certain services on certain platforms. If we don't give them more information, we have limited access to products and services. If we want to be if we want to have autonomy, we can't get personalised services. They've done a very good job of pulling those together and banding them together under the privacy banner. So we need to design for respectful and understood privacy. And more philosophical aspect here. Ask the right questions of yourself and your technology. So these are all very, very, very personal questions to ask yourself. Most businesses I work with focus on the bottom one, certainly in terms of data processing and product design. You can guarantee that the answer at the beginning is no, I would absolutely not want this to be a front page story. But that enables us to pull back and go, okay, well, why wouldn't we be happy for this? Is the way we're gathering data not right? Is it ethically questionable? Are we not focused on the individual human? So some necessities now, some things that I personally think, and my guess would be a lot of you may disagree with this, but these are some kind of hand grenades into the market I think need to happen sooner rather than later. And the first one of them is that big tech are split up. I think Facebook, Amazon, Google, maybe even Apple have got to the stage where they're too big, and and capitalism is the stick that they get beaten with. Capitalism at its best is empathetic. It really, in many cases, if it's applied in the right principles, in the right way, it can level society up. And unfortunately, big tech is not doing that. It's actually stopping capitalism delivering on its potential. They're innovation stranglers. If anyone comes up with an idea in their marketplace, they snap them up and stop it straight away. They do create a ceiling on income growth. One can think about Uber, one can think about Amazon, even though Amazon are paying $15 an hour in the States. That is still stifling income growth in terms of those individuals and what they're able to do. They restrict the growth of their customers. I don't know if any of you run, I know a couple of people on the call run digital agencies. It's very hard to use other products apart from Google in terms of PPC, in terms of social media, in terms of Facebook, in terms of their ad platforms. And they hate disruption. Big tech hate disruption. The disruptors hate being disruptive. And again, you can see that through the sheer volume and the amount of legal cases that are going through the States at the moment. So unfortunately, I think they need to be split up. Again, this is a slightly radical argument. We know that Amazon pay less tax. They should pay a percentage tax on every sale they make. And sure, they're going to try and pass it on to the marketplace. But as a platform provider, they should pay a percentage per transaction that's on their platform. And I think that one could argue that could be the same for lots of other direct-to-consumer platforms, including Airbnb potentially moving forward. This is a much more socially focused one. I believe that we should create universal digital access, and that should be incorporated in the social benefit scheme. We should pay through our taxes to give everyone access to broadband, the latest possible technology and education of how to use it. I think that is so important to the future of the development of humane tech and actually the future of society, and particularly here in the UK. I, for one, would be very happy to pay a little bit more on my tax to enable universal digital access. Again, another slight one from left field, and I have a friend in the States who's actually working for Twitter, and they are considering doing this at the moment. So they are considering charging people who have over a certain amount of followers a per post charge. Now, I'm sure it'll be in the cents, but nevertheless, it will start to create a different business model for Twitter, as opposed to promoting content that excites and engages certain aspects of the community. And they're trying to do a little bit of that by kind of controlling some of the Trump's tweets and putting a kind of disclaimer on them. But the focus of this one is to start to get Twitter and Facebook to think of a slightly different business model. And those are over 100,000, an example, will charge per post and have all their post truth checked manually, potentially, until AI comes up to a level of understanding. I don't know. This is an interesting one. We all pay to use social media. A bit like the Spotify model. Question, would you pay £2 a month to use Twitter or Facebook or WhatsApp? Would you pay a little bit more not to receive advertisements? Now, again, this is focused not on stamping down on Facebook or Twitter, but it's focused on giving them an alternative business model to move forward with, taking the kind of Spotify principles. And this is something for us all to do, really. It's in our behest to enable us to extol the virtues of technology for good. And I'm never quite sure that tech for good angle is one that really connects with people in the real world. But we need to promote how tech can lift and rise and articulate struggles that we have as a community, whether it's Black Lives Matter, trans rights, or other human rights. They have all had their reach increased through social, but it's been lost in the hate reach that has manifestly been much greater through social as well. But there is some fantastic stuff going on out there, and I think we need, as digital leaders, we need to shout about that. This is a much more personal one to me. Ban them, marketing cookies. They're not needed. They're not required. They don't enhance user experiences. I think that, again, that's based on my experience of turning off cookies a little while ago on my client site. I think it would make the whole way we interact with certainly with web technology, a little bit smoother and a little bit calmer. Finally, you'll be glad to know, we've become willfully blind to the fact that there is such a thing as truth. There's no such thing as alternative truth. There is truth. There are facts. Principally, we've left ourselves open to have these challenged. And it's equally open for us to kind of reinforce them and to remind people. However, it needs a collective focus on doing that. We've all seen examples where someone has stood up to an untruth and actually been absolutely destroyed, digitally and in real life. We shouldn't forget that. We shouldn't forget that tech can make a difference, but it's got to come from a place of truth and facts and compassion, back to the very start of this talk. So I'll just end with a quote which really stood out for me from William James, who's an author, philosopher, and this really resonated in terms of, we pay attention to things that will enhance our lives, and we pay attention to things that should inspire our imagination, inspire our sense of humanity. And we're kind of losing that a little bit, I think. And I think digital has had a part to play in that, but equally it can have a better part to play on that in the future. So the second line there has a page on the Firesmoke website which has all the references to my rambles today. It also has links to sources, including some of the video, which hopefully will come out as better quality on that website. Also some reading, some links to some books and study papers, if that's your thing, in terms of what is and isn't going on in the digital space in terms of designing for more humane technology. On that Firesmoke website as well, there's also 2 or 3 other talks I do which go into a lot more detail, and you can find out a little bit more information on them of them on there. And if you want, sign up or send some details through to take it forward. They're all free. They're all part of the research project. So you're more than welcome to jump on board, and we can take this conversation further a wee bit. That is it. Thanks for listening. Sorry for the slightly haphazard start. Hold my hands up. I've never used Teams before, so I apologise for that. But yeah, I'll stop talking now, and I'll let